Hi, I'm Nicola, and I say well done to you on caring about your students so much that you're here to participate in this training today. I'm a primary teacher and I've just completed a Research Masters of Education on the Mastery Learning Folder process that I will be sharing with you today. I'd like to start with what you consider to be the greatest challenges in achieving the objectives of IEPs for your students. Didn't take me long to come up with a list. And first on my list was actually achieving the learning objectives. Secondly, managing different student needs, organising the learning content for each student, finding time and support to implement the plans, keeping track of multiple students' plans and their results, and of course, attending case conferences and demonstrating accountability. And all these challenges can add up to quite a bit of stress. So I'm going to use these challenges to frame the ways that the Mastery Learning Folder strategy can support you. The only problem is that there's multiple facets to be explained, and you'll only understand the full picture if you stick with the presentation. For example, when I introduce that learning content is in flashcard format, some may think, oh, flashcards, I don't want anything to do with them. And yet the theory component will explain why they are the perfect format to facilitate very effective cognitive psychology learning strategies. So please stick with me, and in the end, you'll have all the information you need to decide if this approach could work for you and your colleagues. So write down your questions as we go. If they're not answered by the end, then please send them to me in an email. The first challenge to address is achieving learning and behavioural objectives. My journey to using Mastery Learning Folders began when teaching number bonds to 10 with my Year 1 students. I wanted these number combinations to be remembered because they were foundational to more advanced, complex mental math strategies. So as a part of the maths lesson, I spent a week using a variety of learning activities and was very confident that most students could tell me the number combinations that made 10 from memory. However, 3 weeks later, at the end of term assessment, less than 30% of the class remembered what I thought they had mastered. What I'd witnessed was working memory, not long-term memory. At that time, I recalled seeing a tool that teachers had used many years before called a Mastery Learning Folder. All I could remember was that content moved forward through pockets when correct, or returned back to the same pocket when incorrect. So by trial and error, I set about developing a process and a tool that would help me to help the students move their learning from working memory into long-term memory. The last two on the bottom, one is handmade and one is hardcover, were developed during my Research Masters. I started the Masters because the process was working so well, but I didn't know what the theoretical foundation was. So once I started learning about that, I could then align the process with research and revise the tool as well. This was then examined and passed by Dr. Robert Bork. If you're familiar with learning science, you may have heard of him. Dr. John Sweller, who developed cognitive load theory, and Dr. John Hattie, who was responsible for visible learning. I learned a huge amount from this experience, and the first gem that I learned took me right back to my experience with teaching the Year 1s number bonds to 10. It was that it's not enough for students to be exposed to learning or participate in activities or even to understand concepts. These things alone will not create durable learning. Learning held only in working memory will be forgotten. This is a natural process. It's the default position, unless we find a way to move learning into long-term memory, and that's what cognitive psychology is all about. If nothing has changed in long-term memory, then nothing has been learned. So what can we do about it? Well, more than 100 years ago, a man named Hermann Ebbinghaus conducted a memory experiment using the memorization of nonsense syllables. As he tested himself, he remembered less and less of what he'd learnt, and this is a well-known phenomenon that I'm sure we can all relate to. Erickson and Poole researched the habits and practices of exceptional performers from a wide variety of fields, and they identified a set of general principles which they collectively termed deliberate practice, which is focused, purposeful, and systematic. Deliberate practice interrupts forgetting. Mastery learning folders are a tool that facilitate deliberate practice. Let's look at Ebbinghaus again. In response to his forgetting problem, he developed a routine which involves spacing out his practice as well as testing himself, which is called retrieval practice. He had great results. Spaced practice and retrieval practice create more durable learning, a concept developed by Dr. Robert Bork, which he called desirable difficulty. The spacing between practice sessions causes some forgetting. Forgetting creates effortful remembering, and this struggle to recall learning makes it more durable. Dr. Daniel Willingham explains it this way. If you repeat the same thought-demanding task again and again, the brain seeks to remember it to avoid this thinking effort. So it turns out that our brains do not like trying to remember. Again, we can probably relate. Our body is designed that way to respond to the environment. So when it's cold, we shiver. And when we use our muscles over time, they grow in response. Well, our brain doesn't like thinking. So effortful remembering triggers an increase in the storage strength of what we are trying to remember. It's kind of like a memory hack. So mastery learning folders use retrieval practice and space 3 to 5 folder sessions across the week. And here you see some examples of folder session schedules. The smaller the spaced interval, the easier the recall becomes. So your IEP students may need more than 3 sessions per week. The goal is effortful but successful retrievals. Write down those questions, but I will be talking more about this and how it can be facilitated. Mastery learning folders use a combination of spaced retrieval practice. This is a highly effective learning strategy developed through cognitive psychology research. Dunlosky, a well-known researcher in his field, says that in combining spaced and retrieval practice, many students will begin to master material they never thought they could learn. Let's go on to managing different student learning needs. When I was teaching pre-primary students, our school used the systematic synthetics phonics program Jolly Phonics, which is an excellent program backed by many years of research. I followed my students into year 1 and found that at the start of the year, the achievement wasn't too dissimilar. However, there was a bit of diversity of forgetting over the summer break. As the year went on, some students really took off with their early literacy, and of course, others took longer. I'd just like you to have a think about what is the most important predetermining factor for learning. It is prior knowledge. And this is why differentiation is so important. The Mastery Learning Folder strategy can greatly assist you with this, but there is something we all have to accept, and that is that there is no fast track to create uniform achievement between students. In that year 1 class that I was referring to, 2 students took the full year to master all of their phonic sounds through using the Mastery Learning Folders as support, whilst other students got to the point of reading fluently. Students must start their practice from the point of their prior knowledge, and Mastery Learning folders will enable them to learn at their own pace. Now we're going to go on to take a look at how you can select and organise learning content. Here is a genuine IEP. You can create your plan and place a copy into the clear sleeve on the back of the student's Mastery Learning folder, or glue it to the back of your handmade folder. You can use this as a working copy to highlight when content enters the folder, and everyone involved can see exactly where the student is at. There's two versions of pocket labels. Here you see the junior labels. If you visit my website, you can join the free flashcard club, which contains hundreds of foundational learning concepts in flashcard format. There's a bee theme on these flashcards, and progress can be described to junior students as a bee moving from daisy to daisy, collecting pollen, resting, and eventually creating something great, honey, and learning. And this is the appearance of a handmade folder. I supply these as a kit, but you can also make your own. These are the labels for older students. Labels really are just a personal choice because the process works in exactly the same way right through to adult learning. Here you see the variety of types of content that can be used in Mastery Learning folders. The use of flashcards can cause concerns about rote learning, but rote learning is non-contextual. The flashcards in student folders are based on classroom learning and individual needs. Flashcards can address specific and important basic facts, but they're not limited to this type of content. Students can practice strategies where testing involves not just the answer, but an explanation of the procedure that they've used. Flashcards in the Mastery Learning folder process can also be used to enhance mindfulness of routines and also of personal goals. And this format enables the use of spaced retrieval with student answers determining the spacing and the pace of practice. Using your observations, assessments, and learning progressions, you can identify learning content through special needs programs, over-the-shoulder marking, specific consolidation needs based on what you're doing in the classroom, and also remediation and extension. The flashcards in the Flashcard Club can also be used for pre or post screening. The Quick Screeners PA Phonics Toolkit contains literacy flashcards based on learning progressions as described by the WA North East Metropolitan Language Development Centre instruction framework. These quick one-page screeners are used to determine where your IEP student needs to begin practicing their early literacy skills. Students are screened and move through the levels until they begin to struggle, at which point there are flashcard sets in the Flashcard Club, which can then be placed in their folder. The student then continues through the practice flashcards in the preceding levels. Another resource, a free resource I'd like to share with you, is the Mental Maths Continuum, which contains mental maths knowledge and strategy learning objectives up to Year 4. These flashcard sheets can also be used to screen students. Don't be fooled by the year levels. Many students do not have these facts and strategies in their long-term memory. Here's an example from the Year 2 section of the document, and you can see that these flashcards are building on the Friends of 10 and doubles that are a part of the Year 1 section. Another super effective use of Mastery Learning folders is to remediate spelling. During everyday writing activities, have a stash of blank individualised spelling flashcards from the Flashcard Club and write down spelling corrections as needed on the go. Your IEP students could keep a Ziploc bag in their desk drawer, which collects any spontaneous flashcards, which they can later add to the store pocket of their folder. As you've noticed, personal goals can also be used in the folder, and they can be wide-ranging and very individualised. These behavioural objectives are brought to the student's mind each time a folder session occurs, and so this helps them to be more and more mindful of them. During retrieval testing, the student is asked to explain how they're going with a personal goal. For example, if previously they said that they sometimes set up their desk before the classroom door opens, you could ask, have you improved on this? And if they say, yes, I'm usually doing it now, then that flashcard can move forward. As learning content is identified, it can be stored in business card holders, or I can supply the heavy-duty flashcard organiser sheets you see here, which can hold at least 20 flashcards per pocket. Alternatively, you may use a different storage system. The beauty of the Mastery Learning Folder strategy is that the IEP workload can be spread, especially if the tool is used as an admin-directed whole school approach, where shared education assistant support is provided. However, this won't be the case for you at the moment, but it is certainly something you could work towards as you demonstrate excellent student results with this approach. And the teacher says, it's not me. So who does conduct the folder testing? Well, I use the term tutors to describe any volunteer who conducts the sessions one-on-one with a student. When do the folder sessions occur? It's almost always outside of the regular lesson context because the session is one-on-one. However, it may work within a small group instruction setting concurrently with independent activities, or likewise, it could be provided by an EA who is providing in-class support one-on-one. When I use the strategy with the whole class, the folder sessions were conducted during the morning drop-off time when volunteer support was available. I used a small number of parent helpers and student leaders. However, for IEP students, an excellent option is through home support with a combination of perhaps parents and older siblings. As you would know, homework has been criticised in recent years, and yet research identifies that if it's based on classroom learning and tailored to the needs of the student, it can be highly effective for student learning. Parents are often requested to conduct some learning activities to do with students' IEPs, and the Mastery Learning Folder process is consistent, structured, and very quick. It takes about 5 minutes, and it's a small ask to include parents in that process. If they are unwilling, it does give you an opportunity to discuss other support options with your admin, which I will further discuss. I can also supply you with a complimentary parent training video and brochure. When I use the Mastery Learning Folders with the whole class, my volunteers could get through all the students in the time between the door opening and the first bell in the morning. So that was around about 20 to 25 minutes for 25 students. So if you're using the folder process just for IEP students, it should take a lot less time and need fewer volunteers. The folder session is so quick because learning is achieved by the spaced retrieval learning strategy. Each flashcard is tested, tutors check for understanding, explain as necessary, and move on to the next flashcard. It has nothing to do with time-consuming drilling. At the end of the presentation, I will summarise the support available and explain how to access the free resources I've described. So I have gone through quite a few aspects of the Mastery Learning Folder strategy, and what's left is the folder process in more detail. So the tutor is responsible for the testing that occurs in the green pockets in the folder, and these sessions occur during the week. The teacher, or EA, is responsible for the blue pockets and tests the content of just 2 pockets. This session is described as mastery testing because the spacing between sessions is much longer, up to 2 weeks for content here and 3 weeks rest here. This duration of spacing facilitates the movement of learning into long-term memory and provides a good indication of progress towards mastery. Every time a flashcard is tested, it is an assessment of mastery and a learning event. To recap, there will be on average 3 to 5 tutor sessions per week, and mastery testing is conducted by the teacher or education assistant once a week on any day that is convenient. Alternatively, it could be staggered across the week with students allocated to a specific day. The mastery testing session can take as little as 2 minutes per student because only 2 pockets are being tested. Flashcards can be placed in the store pocket at any time, but often this occurs during the mastery testing session. The store pocket can take as many flashcards as will fit because they're not yet active in the folder process. So now let's take a look at the mastery learning folder learning process in more detail and see how it reflects the ideals of deliberate practice and how it uses the highly effective learning strategy of spaced retrieval practice. At this point, as teacher, you decide on the number of flashcards that will be actively revised in the process. This directly relates to how long each folder session will take. 20 flashcards will equal a session of about 5 minutes per student. If the sessions end up being too long or too short, the number of active flashcards can be adjusted at the mastery test session by adding extra flashcards to the first pocket or returning some to the store pocket. The testing of each pocket includes Step 1, the retrieval test, and Step 2, elaborative questioning and instruction if required. Step 1, the retrieval test. Tutors should try to create a friendly and low stakes atmosphere. Testing occurs first because it's the previous spaced interval that creates the desirable difficulty. When the flashcards are removed from each pocket, they're rearranged into subject areas. So all types of maths flashcards can go together, the spelling together, phonics together, etc. Answers can be demonstrated in different ways: recall, recognition, explanation, or demonstration, for example. And the focus is on content being remembered or forgotten more than using the terms correct or incorrect. Step 2 is elaborative questioning and instruction as required for each flashcard. So if it's not remembered, then check for understanding, ask questions about the content, and provide instruction if required. Elaborative questioning can also ask how the content was remembered. Here's some ideas to reinforce those memory pathways. The folder process also affords the opportunity to develop students' metacognition, thinking about their learning. We want students to know that the process uses forgetting to create effortful retrieval from memory, which then leads them to be able to remember the content better over longer periods of time. The beauty of this understanding is that they can legitimately blame the process for their incorrect answers, not themselves. So here's some ideas for reinforcing desirable difficulties and students' self-esteem. The perfect sweet spot for desirable difficulty is effortful but successful retrievals. For this demo, the folder is set up with all the pockets populated with flashcards, so maybe 2 weeks from the folder first being used. I'm going to take you through the tutor stage now, where the sessions are occurring during the week. The tutor commences from the start pocket, but if there's no content in that pocket, then they move backwards until they find the pocket that does have content. I won't be rearranging the flashcards into subject areas, as for demonstration purposes, I'm using just a small number of flashcards. Let's start the testing. The first flashcard is 18 divided by 3, and because the student identified that the answer was 6, it has moved forward. However, it's also moved out of the tutor testing stage. So in order to keep the number of flashcards in this stage the same, the tutor will transfer a new flashcard from the store pocket into the test pocket. So let's just have a think about that flashcard that was correct, 18 divided by 3. The tutor could ask, how did you remember? The student may say, I know that 3 times 6 is 18, so 18 divided by 3 is 6. On to the next flashcard. This one could not be identified, so the tutor may ask which parts are the trickiest and perhaps ask, how might you be able to remember it next time? This final word was identified, and so it has left the tutor stage, so a new flashcard is transferred from the store pocket into the test pocket. The first pocket is now empty, so we can transfer the incorrect flashcard back into the same pocket. So moving backwards, we hit the rest pocket. The content in this pocket is not tested, it's simply moved as a bundle forward, and this creates a wider spaced interval. It makes that content a little bit more difficult to encourage that thinking struggle. So moving backwards, we next go to the third test pocket. That subitizing was identified. This word wasn't, so the tutor could ask which parts of that word can be sounded out. The pocket is empty, so the incorrect flashcard returns to the same pocket. The number of coloured dots on the 10 frame was identified. And here the tutor is asking for 2 addition and 2 subtraction sums, but all of those couldn't be identified. So the tutor may ask 7 take away what equals 4 to provide a little bit of scaffolding and check for understanding. The pocket's empty, so the incorrect flashcard returns to the same pocket. The individualised spelling word cousin was correctly written down, and so the tutor could say something like, well, that was tricky, how did you remember it? The individualised spelling word wasn't able to be recalled, and so the tutor might ask, well, which parts of it did you know, or which part can be sounded out? This is a personal goal. I raised my hand and waited to be called in group situations. If the student can say, yes, I've been trying to do that, and maybe give an example, then that flashcard can move forward. The next flashcard is for the student to identify if it's an odd or even number. the number was correctly identified as odd, the tutor could ask, what's another odd number in the hundreds? Another personal goal. Yesterday, I remembered to breathe slowly and deeply when I felt upset. So the student may say, no, I didn't remember to do that yesterday or today. And so the tutor can have a chat about that, and those two flashcards that were incorrect go back to the same pocket. The tutor is responsible for the testing that occurs in the green pockets 3 to 5 times during the week. The teacher or education assistant conducts the mastery testing stage. I have to say that as teacher, I preferred to do this testing as it gave me a good sense of how each student was progressing. In this demo, mastery testing occurs every Friday. Testing starts from the mastery test pocket or from the most advanced content if that pocket is empty. Starting from the final pocket. This is a personal goal. I took turns with others in partner or small group activities. So for this flashcard, the student has demonstrated progress, so it will go to the mastered pocket. This flashcard is also recalled. This flashcard is asking, is the number odd or even? The student couldn't answer that question, so the teacher may ask which place value they should be looking at. And that returns to the same pocket. Working backwards through the pockets, we come to a rest pocket. So that whole bundle of flashcards moves up to the mastery test pocket. Going backwards to the next rest pocket, that whole bundle moves up. Now we've got an empty pocket for the next test to occur. The division fact was remembered. It moves forward. The sight word wasn't. So you could talk about the fact that some parts of the word are phonetic, some parts are not. And who is friends with 5 was recalled. So the incorrect flashcard goes back to the same pocket, and the bundle in the rest pocket comes up together to the next pocket. We know that the goal of spaced retrieval is effortful but ultimately successful retrievals. This will begin happening as the student gets used to the content, the first few sessions that it's in the folder. But if the student is continuing to find the process too effortful, there is something that you can do. You know that on average, a student will use the folder 3 to 5 times a week successfully. However, if the student is finding it too effortful and not experiencing enough success, then you can add in an extra session. And if that isn't sufficient to get them to that sweet spot of effortful but successful retrievals, then you can add another session in. What this does is it reduces the spaced interval, and so the recall is easier. During the mastery testing session, there's the option of annotating a running total of mastered flashcards. Students love quoting how many flashcards they've mastered, especially when the total gets into the hundreds. This template can slot into the mastered pocket, or you can glue it on your handmade folders. Another option is for students to graph their total. This template also records the homework sessions. I can provide both of these templates. You've seen now how flashcards don't graduate from the process until they're mastered. So you can highlight and tick the objectives as flashcards enter the store, or you can annotate the IEP if changes are made. If you decide to use the Mastery Learning folder strategy, there will be no stressful anticipation of case conferences. You will have identified the essential learning material, provided a quick evidence-informed practice process for parents to support their child's progress, and have a running record of the student's progress displayed within the tool. But what if, after providing this support, the parents don't play their part? When this happened to me, I got immediate support from admin. They provided me with the small amount of EA time I needed to cover the students' practice sessions at morning drop-off time. So this is another reason I recommend using homework as the delivery method. It's the least time consuming for you. It's not a big ask of the parents. And if that form of delivery doesn't work, you may be able to use a student leader or parent helper to conduct the short session during the morning drop-off time. So, where to from here? First of all, email me or schedule a chat to discuss your questions. Secondly, join the Flashcard Club. You can do this from my website. Number 3, please share this presentation. It's a lot easier to start something new when you do it with others, and then you're able to share the workload. And 4, if your colleagues are interested, get in touch to arrange a live Zoom for your staff. It's a great way to get support and training for your specific school context. And 5, if you're happy to make the arrangements with me for this option, I'll send you a complimentary hardcover Mastery Learning folder sample to keep and to show your teachers. To recap, here's the ways that you could be supported to implement the management of IEPs using Mastery Learning folders. And I'm always available to assist and advise if you need me. If you're watching this training via YouTube, then head to this page on my website. There you can access the resources that you see here. If you're already on this page, then see below. To finish up, you need few materials in order to create your own Mastery Learning folders. Alternatively, you could share a handmade class kit with your colleagues and divide up the folders. Another option is to use high-quality hardcover folders, which can be reused year after year. They're also available for book listing. Hey, thanks for staying till the end. I'm here to help you in whatever way I can to make individual education plans a lot more manageable. So, all the best.